Okay, everybody unmute yourselves again.
Here we
Check,
are.
check. Hello again.
Hi.
Hey, hey.
Hello.
Okay, we are all set. Um, Welcome, everyone. This is Billy from Bookstore Romance Day. Thank you for your patience with my technical glitch. I really do apologize for that. I want to take a moment to thank all of you for being here. Thank you to our authors for joining us. Thank you to Steamy Lit for putting this all together for us. The Q&A is open, so please put any questions you may have for any of the panelists in the Q&A and not in the chat. They will get lost in the chat. I will be in the chat myself, dropping links so that you can buy books, audiobooks, ebooks, whatever suits your fancy. And now I am going to turn it over to Andrea from Steamy Lit. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. For those of you who don't know, my name's Andrea and I work for Steamy Lit. For those of you who don't know about Steamy Lit, we are a romance literary collective that is dedicated to amplifying underrepresented voices and celebrating self-love through the power of storytelling. We have 3 bookstores locations in Florida, Tampa, Fort Lauderdale, and Miami. So if you're local, please come to visit us. We would love to see you. And now I would love to introduce tonight's moderator, author Frankie Fire, who has a new book that just released today that is titled Outplayed by Love. So congratulations, Frankie. So now take it away.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Sapphic Survivor. I was recently told it was Survivor and Smut. So if that's your jam. Um, I am so honored today to be able to ask all these fun questions for your favorite authors. And thank you so much for taking time on your busy schedules to share with us and celebrate Pride. We're going to talk about love out loud, and thank you for just being here. So I'm just going to go in a random order. We're going to do some intros and quick intros, and then we're going to start with questions. So if you could introduce yourself, Brittany, start with you.
Hi everyone, I'm Brittany Johnson. I am the author of Deadly Ever After, a cover that's definitely not decorating almost my entire background right now. I am a lover of fairy tales, a lover of all things whimsical, romance, and a lot of my work likes to explore kind of the messy middles of emotions and the nuances within just being human ultimately. Outside of that, I'm also a content strategist and a yapper online, so it's a fun time.
Thank you. Thank you. Carmen.
Hey, everyone. I'm Carmen Lee. I essentially write a lot of sapphic, mostly books. I really like to write small town sapphic books set in my fictional towns in Georgia, mostly because I consider myself a Southern belle, but a very gay one. And so I want to see that on page. And so I tend to write a lot of that. I wrote kind of my first dark sapphic mafia this past January that has been pretty well received. And so I'm enjoying now being a little bit messier on page, but still sappically. So
Awesome. Great books. Um, Chip, what you got?
Hi, everyone. My name's Chip Pons. My book Dearly Departed just came out last week. It is a Hades reimagining, so I'm entering my Greek god era. I write romances that are centered on queer joy. So I love having, just a swoony happily ever after where any trauma or struggle in the books don't have anything to do with our sexuality. And I live in Washington, D.C. with my husband, and I'm just so happy to be here.
Love it. Thank you. TJ.
Hello, I'm TJ Alexander. I write romance novels with transgender and non-binary main characters. My latest book is a Regency romance called A Lady for All Seasons about a woman who is looking for a husband for financial reasons, but instead falls for a gender fluid poet.
And last but not least, Lee.
Hi everyone, I'm Adib Karam. I write books from cradle to grave, but most germane to this, adult romance featuring lots of boning. Most recently, the Lambda Literary Award losing It Had to Be Him. Oh, there we are. Um, Lost to the extremely awesome TJ Alexander, so I have no hard feelings about that. TJ should obviously squash me like a bug anytime they feel like it.
Don't say that.
I know, sorry, don't tempt you with a good time. I also serve on the board of directors for Authors Against Book Bans.
Nice, nice. Thank you. That was really great. So how I'm going to set this up is I'm going to ask individual authors questions, and then I'm going to have y'all jump in whenever something comes to mind that you want to share. So let's see what I got here. I got notes. So um, let's see. We're gonna start with Chip. Um, it's just random. It's just what I have written down. So the first question I have here, right, is how do you go about like incorporate? You mentioned grief in your introduction, but how do you go about incorporating grief while still honoring your character's joy, right?
Yeah, I feel like I've unintentionally made grief my brand, which is fun. But I think grief and joy and love are more interchangeable than we like to admit, maybe. We have grief in our life because we have love in our life. And just because you are grieving doesn't mean the joy, happiness, and love goes away. And just because you have joy, happiness, and love in your life doesn't mean your grief goes away. And so for me, grief is as relatable as love. It's two of the most common and deeply human experiences that we will endure on this planet. And, I think one of the most beautiful things about romance specifically is finding someone whose hand you can hold through your darkest day. And um, I think that's what makes us all like that's what makes a happily ever after worth it is that we have someone who we're going to ride off into the sunset with who can face those hard times with us.
Yeah, it's beautifully said. Absolutely. Um, anyone else have anything they want to add to that?
I'll add something to that because I feel like that was. I feel like people think everyone obviously remember WandaVision, but it's that the love is grief persistent. I don't. Okay, I butchered it. Okay, I'm a fake MCU fan, but point is that I do completely agree with the idea that grief and love are not separated. They're just like one whole entity, and it's just like different iterations of how it manifests in our life. And I think within all the different like phases of grief, one of my the I think one of the best retellings of like the real grief process of that joy is actually like Black. I'm speaking a lot of MCU. This is funny. Black Panther 2, because we kind of see that even though Shuri is grieving her brother, she's just like still having these pockets of joy, of laughter, of just life still unfolding as she's processing. So I just wanted to kind of add to that and say that it's beautiful that within your work you're making sure to find those pockets versus having books that are so grief heavy versus very unserious about it, and just finding that beautiful sweet spot.
It is
I
a
also think
balance.
that's,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think that's great with romance too, because it's a way to express and kind of work through grief in a way that's almost safe because you know there's going to be a happily ever after at the end. So you feel like almost more comfortable working through some of that. Like some of the heaviest books I've read, I felt safe going in, even looking at the content warnings and knowing, some of them are going to be pretty heavy, but just also knowing like, okay, it's going to be worked through to the end. And I feel like in a safe way, I can go through that journey with the characters and know that like coming out the other side, there is going to be a happily ever after, however that, looks for the characters.
I think a lot of, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say what I love so much about the romance genre is I feel like we see that happily ever after, and that's where people maybe whittle it down to fluff. But we have so many books that are filled with such heavy and heart-wrenching and hard things, but because like we know what the genre expects of these books, like we can kind of go through it safely. And so yeah, Carmen, I love what you just.
Hmm.
Did you want to add anything, Brittany?
I was just gonna say, my favorite example of this is Instructions for Dancing by Nicole Yoon, because that book, it's literally just a grief book that the backdrop is dancing, and it helped me through some of like my first true grief moments. And I was just adding to it because it made me think of that story. That's all.
Yeah, and it's an important conversation like we're talking about here in romance. And we were talking about this panel is about love out loud, it's pride, right? So there is we celebrate and we also honor the people that are still in the closet, the people that are, that we have so much to be proud for. Um, and it's important to not, we celebrate all different types, right? Um, thank you so much. That was a great. Brittany, I got a question for you. So, diverse fairy tales historically really weren't written for uh for queer people, for Black and brown folks, right? So, what does it feel like to give queer and Black readers this fairy tale moment that they didn't get to have growing up?
So I, without getting too deep into it, I used to work at Disney World, and I worked in Disney Entertainment. And the reason I worked in Disney Entertainment, if you can connect some dots here, was because back when I was just a guest, I went to go visit Tiana. And at this point in my life, I really didn't like that I was a dark skinned woman. I was going to a PWI. A lot of the other Black girls were incredibly light skinned, or just quite honestly, there were not no one else. There was like three of us. And I hid a lot of that insecurity within my humor, within like deflection. But when I saw Tiana, I will never ever forget this moment because it's a moment that changed my life. She looked at me and she was so gorgeous, so beautiful. And she said, "It looks like we could be sisters." And I cried in her arms. It's pretty pathetic, actually, in a good way. But like, I sobbed back in 2013, graduating high school. And when eventually I would take my turn working in entertainment, it was that same moment of now I get to give back, right? And I think that's exactly how it feels with Deadly Ever After, being able to tell this sapphic story, especially as someone who didn't. I came out, I still would say pretty young. I was like in my early 20s when I came out for like the second or third time, because you know how it can be. But like, I'm not actually. It's like, nah, baby, you're a little fruity. It's okay. But I when I was writing this story, I always knew that it was a sapphic story. It was never a conversation of is it or isn't it, should it or shouldn't be. And when it was announced, I always knew that there would be a lot of love for it, or it would have a lot of people who would need this type of story with this type of representation and these types of themes and messages based around this type of representation. But I was still floored to see just how many people it resonated with, and the messages that I got of, yes, it made them feel seen, but it made them feel more comfortable within expressing themselves emotionally as a queer person, especially as a queer femme. So it's humbling. It's beautiful, and it is the reminder, I think, in really harsh times, both in publishing but also just in the world, that there's a reason that we do this. It's not necessarily to make lists, it's not for the adaptations, it's not for any of that, even though I'm never going to say no. But it's for the kids, it's for the teens, it's for the people who need these stories. And it's just so grounding, truly.
That's beautiful. Absolutely. Does anyone else have anything to add regarding fairy tales and rewrites and all the fun stuff? I know a couple other fairy tale books here, retellings. If not, that's okay too, because I got more questions. I sure do. All right, we'll go to the next one. Carmen, um, We'll start with your small town. We'll start with your small towns. What's it like to build small towns where they feel like home for queer characters rather than, just restrictive?
It's interesting because I definitely have had people ask me if I'm like modeling my small towns after small towns that I know of, and I have to just be quite frank and say absolutely not. Um, growing up a queer Black kid in the South, there weren't any places for me to go. I think we got our first queer bookstore when I was a senior in high school. And, that was probably the one time that I skipped school because I was, always straight laced when it came to a lot of things. And as soon as that store opened up, ironically, it was on Church Street, which is quite interesting. My friends and I skipped school and we were like, Mission Impossible, we have to get in there. And just seeing books about like queer people, because I didn't even have the words for it back then. Um, it made me like want to number one see my books on there but see them in a certain way. I love small towns. I've always wanted to live in one, but unfortunately the ones that I've gone through have not been great, for queer folks and especially not for queer Black people. And so for me a lot of times when I'm building out these towns I'm pretty deliberate in that I don't want there to be homophobia. I want it to be a safe space where we feel like we can be there. And it's never a question of, oh, you like her, that's a woman, right? It's like, well, obviously, that's why I like her. I want it to not, kind of like what Chip said, when there are issues, I want it to not be around sexuality. I don't want there to be a question of if someone likes someone else, are you sure about that sexuality there? I want it to be very comforting because there are so many other issues to be dealt with the human experience outside of having to question or talk about or discuss if you're bisexual or a lesbian or gay or transgender or anything. And I wanted some of that in the small towns, but I also wanted to build them where, once again, you can explore some of those other issues of the human experience and feel safe. Um, I essentially took what I knew about a lot of small towns that I've gone through and been in and do the exact opposite. Um, I wanted to, but I also still wanted to keep that small town feel. I wanted there to be gossip. I wanted there to be the old church ladies that I remember in my childhood where they do gossip and they do talk about, did you see what she's wearing? Oh my gosh, that hussy, what's going on? I wanted there to still be that because that is a lot of, it is a lot of fun. I'm not gonna lie. I'm one of those at this point about to be one of those old church ladies that would gossip sitting outside too on my front porch drinking some sweet tea. And I wanted to bring that into my books very deliberately. So it feels cozy and small town and it feels like home while you're also talking about, the hot, female mechanic that lives down the street that you want to take muffins and see if she will, like your muffins kind of situation. And so yeah, I love building the small town worlds. And I also love being able to go to different book events in smaller towns and have people come up and say, my partner and I live in a small town. And finally we're seeing small towns being represented and, with the queer fiction that we're reading. And I'm like, that's great. What town do you live in? Because I want to go there.
Oh, that's good. I do love a good small town romance. And it's amazing how you can just really go deep in a world and have so much fun. So, anyone else have anything to add regarding small towns?
I would just add that I think one of the things I love about Carmen's books is I think a similar thing that I love about Schitt's Creek, which is that um, having lived lives where small towns can be sources of fear, uh, they keep subverting our expectations, and the joke is only ever directed upward toward power and never at any of the like. It's never at the expense of queer people, but it's also very rarely at the expense of like earnest townspeople. It's only ever at like power structures or rich assholes, and I love that. I would also add as queer people, we're never too young to start gossiping about straight people. Like it's our birthright.
Oh, it's my sister and I, like, our favorite thing to do is, did you see what she brought that man to the reunion? A man kind of situation. Yeah, I love that.
See, okay, next time you have a session, invite me, please. That sounds
Oh,
delightful.
100%. My sister and I, like, I base a lot of I have a lot of sisters. I have six siblings, six sisters. And so a lot of the conversations and things that come in my book are very much based off of conversations that we have had. So
I feel like we could have a group
100%.
chat specifically just for like the Instagram captions on Valentine's Day. Like,
Ooh,
there's a book in
yeah.
that in and of itself. Carry on.
Or on Facebook. It's like,
Right. Do people still update their status on Facebook? I don't know. I don't get on there, but
oh, they do.
it's
They
like
totally
there's some
do.
drama because, like, what did Betty do over there?
The Facebook survivors are honestly the best people on social media, I will say. It's always a hoot. You never know what's going to happen. Join the Facebook groups. That's where the real tea is.
Yeah, that's awesome. I do love a small town. They're fun. They're a lot of fun. Anyone else with small town stuff? No. All right. So one thing I've realized I forgot to mention to all our awesome readers here is questions. So if you could pop in your questions in the Q&A, and we'll get to them at the last like 5-10 minutes or so, and we'll go from there. So apologize, I forgot to mention that part. I was just so excited about diving in that I forgot. But I hope we'll get some questions and we'll answer those towards the end. All right, let's see here. TJ, what does it mean for trans and binary, non-binary characters to really be celebrated in romance? Like how does that um yeah, I mean that's the question.
I'd love to experience it. I mean that is not true entirely. That is tongue in cheek. Like as Adib mentioned, like my last book, A Gentleman's Gentleman, won a Lambda Literary Award. Like tons of literary fiction are coming out with amazing, trans masc and trans femme voices behind them. I do feel like, there is a tipping point where our art could go mainstream any day now, and that feels good and exciting. And there are just so many storytellers that I admire that are doing incredible work. Yeah, so obviously that feels really good. And I sense that there's a lot of opportunity. There's also like a ton of work to do in the romance genre, I think, to make it more welcoming for gender diverse authors and people who want to write trans and non-binary love stories. Romance has, like Chip was saying earlier, from outsider perspectives, people who don't understand the genre or haven't read it in a very long time, are just have this idea in their head that it's a very specific and old-fashioned kind of genre, which we know now is not true. That hasn't been true for a long time. But there are still like tons of inroads that I wish that we will see soon being made. The trans and non-binary authors that are active in the romance genre in TradPub are still incredibly few and far between. As far as I know, in romance, adult romance, they're all white. And we're just really lacking in trans feminine voices across the board. Like we simply don't support that kind of art enough or have enough respect for it. So I hope we get to a point where that improves or changes. But I do think that it's nice to celebrate the cool stuff that is happening in the indie space, especially. There are so many like awesome trans and non-binary romances that are coming out that are weird and interesting, and I think like cool perspectives that I have not seen before. So I can't wait to see more of that coming out.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. It is really great to see we start to see people really start to like flourish. And I just saw a book. It was like a Beetlejuice book, online. It was the coolest thing. I can't remember the title off the top of my head, but to your point, it's really great to see people. Um, it's no longer just a coming out story or like or something. It branches out and it gets really diverse within the diversity. So, um, we love to see that be more celebrated, of course. So, thank you. Does anyone else have any add to that? Like no notes. All right, let's see here. What we got? Adib, check my notes here.
That's me.
Yeah, it's you. What does it look like for your characters to learn to fully claim their space in their books without sacrificing all the parts of their identity from the different backgrounds and cultures and all those things, right?
To me, those two are not in opposition. They are, in fact, one and the same, that you cannot claim your space without claiming every part of yourself that makes you who you are. Um, that rejecting parts of yourself are therefore rejecting the space you take up in the world. Um, I think as queer people, as people of color, as people living in diaspora, we often shave off parts of ourselves, make ourselves smaller, uh, rather than staying true to who we are. And to be fair, sometimes that's a requirement of moving through the world with any semblance of safety. And of course, safety is a relative and loaded term, especially now with, literally the entire weight of the federal apparatus aimed at obliterating queer people. Um, every day, all of us have to make choices of how out to be, how proud to be. But in romance in particular, I think to me, the central thesis of every romance is you deserve to be loved fully and completely for who you are. And so I think even if in the world as we live in today, we cannot always claim our entire space. Oh, wow. I look like I have a dent in my head. Sorry, I just noticed that. I promise my head is very round. Don't worry. But in romance, we get to envision the world as we wish it to be. And that's one that I wish to be one where queer people and brown people, disabled people, marginalized people um, get to live their full, authentic selves and find love and bone a lot.
Especially that part. To be fair, I didn't even notice the thing about your head with your head until you mentioned it. So
Oh,
now I can't unsee it.
I like notice when my head looks asymmetrical. It actually, I'm very self-conscious about it. So, once
It's
again,
all
Zoom just doesn't
I
know
see
what to do
now.
with the
It's
green
all I
screen.
can see.
I know, right?
It's like,
You know
whoops.
what? We just have to endure it.
Oh, that's funny. Does anyone else have anything to add regarding how your characters go about or writing about characters who take up the space, regardless of their different identities and culture and backgrounds, things like that.
I will say, I want to kind of speak to one of the things that you mentioned about the different ways that we're kind of like showing up in the world within our books. And even when I was marketing Deadly Ever After, I remember that I always knew, kind of akin to what you just said, the characters, they just are queer. They go through so many different things, as we've all said. I don't want the conflict to now be, but is it okay to be who I am? Like, they're going through way worse than am I gay or not. Like, we need to focus over here and not focus on who you want to kiss or not. Like, we got too many issues going on. But that being said, I remember when I was marketing, I started feeling very self conscious because it was a queer normative world, and I feel like there was at that point a lot of very understandably so active queer on the page. They say they're queer, we are this, we are this, we are this, whereas my characters don't really do that. And that there were a lot of people kind of jumping into Reed who I feel like were so keen on the sapphic part that I almost was like, I don't want to misrepresent that what this story is and how it goes about its queerness. Which I do feel is slightly indicative of the lack that we have of whether it has to be queer normative or it has to be they explore on the page and what readers want and what readers don't and what they expect. So I think it's just very interesting that you kind of mentioned the ways that we show up and the ways that we're writing these characters, the way that we're going about the identity within, because that was something I experienced as like the author talking about the book more than I experienced writing the book.
I feel like we could talk about that for an hour alone. Yeah, just yeah, that's writing the book is one thing, and then actually like being like, hey, here's my queer books is a whole other ball of wax. So absolutely. Y'all are killing it with these questions. I'm impressed. I'm like, crap, where's the rest of them? Um, yeah, it's been really great. I want to start to kind of open up a little question here. I wanted to save, I mean, some of us write spice here, so we got to do a little something fun. But what is, and I'm just picking one off the top of my head here. We'll talk about desire and like what does that look like in your books and like why is it desire not that it's not important or it's important, but what does desire look like um towards for your happily ever after, right? So like how does it play a role in your romance books? That was a lot, but hopefully you got one.
Um, I have an immediate answer for that. For me, I love my editor. She's fantastic. We have a great relationship, and she always tells me everything, whether it's, a sex scene or anything, everything you do for your characters needs to drive the plot forward. And I think for me, I've really like leaned back on it's okay to have sex for the sake of having sex. Like pleasure for the sake of pleasure is fine. It doesn't need to have this big like emotional heartbeat to it. Like my characters are sexually active and they want to hook up and get off, and I think that's okay. um, and so, yeah, I think physical intimacy can often lead way to a great strides toward emotional intimacy. But sometimes it's just for fun, and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes it's adults want to get down. It's really that simple. Anybody else
Um,
regarding desire? Go
I'll
for
go
it.
very quickly because desire in young adult is very interesting because it's young adult and we're already dealing with the what's the spice level. They're 17. So that being said, I do think that still desire, love, and intimacy, even in like YA, for Deadly Ever After, there's a lot of conversations about what love actually is because both girls, Amal and Khadijah, are dealing with what they're being told love is. And I think that when you have had some not great childhoods by parents who don't necessarily know how to love properly or who do not care to give you that love and that's not modeled in front of you, you don't necessarily know how to give it and what is healthy receiving it. So I would say for when I was crafting desire and thinking about that type of bond, it was based in that what is healthy, what isn't healthy, what's secure, what is love when it is those things. Like, so it was all about creating something that was confidently secure and safe, especially for those messy moments, but also learning how to say, I'm sorry within them versus writing people off permanently. And it wasn't just the yearning, which there is a lot of yearning. I joke that's like 200 something pages of straight yearning. It's still the yearning and still all of those things, but I do think that the desire was just based in that being able to be a safe space for someone else who's still figuring things out. And a lot of their bond just really grows from that security. So.
I also think, particularly when we talk about more like adult queer romance, um, queer lives and queer love stories, like in real life, often do not follow these sort of heteronormative pattern of like meeting, and then maybe you'll hold hands, and then maybe you'll kiss, and then maybe you'll get married, and then maybe you'll bone it out. So many queer relationships literally are, starting with a hookup. Um, and then you're like, oh, well, that felt good. Let's do it again on repeat. And then maybe we'll accidentally fall in love. And I think by showcasing the role that sex plays in queer lives and in queer love stories, we're I hate to say normalizing because I don't believe queer liberation can ever be achieved by like aspiring to be normal. Um, but we're making it more common for people to see the different tracks that a love story can take, and querying the notion of a love story, I guess, by having them bone it out often, frequently, and intensely.
Yeah,
TJ, I
I'll
love your
just
laugh.
I'll just chime in here from where I'm sitting. This is my sixth book now, and I've written stories that are low on spice and stories that are high on spice and things in between. And I think especially at the start of writing these books, I would get so nervous about how straight people and cis people would react to the love scenes of trans and non-binary people because our bodies and the way that they have been treated traditionally in media have been not great. And I would get really into my own head about the amount of disgust that a cis person might have for a trans body, or, a discomfort in seeing a desire from a trans character depicted on the page. And nowadays, I just can't fucking care about that kind of thing. I just can't think about straight people anymore. I can't think about cis people anymore. I have to just tell a story and put on the page what these characters are thinking and feeling and doing. And some of what they do is have sex because they're people living in a world where I get to tell my story. So yeah, it's getting, I guess, just hornier in that way, in a lot of ways in my work. But I think that it's something that people will either take or leave, and I can't worry about it.
I like that. Yeah, that's amazing. I always say, pleasure is our birthright. And that, and again, it doesn't have to just be sex, but sometimes it very much is. Um, Absolutely. Yeah. Does anyone else have anything to add about that? Because I mean, it's a
I
fun topic.
mean, I think also, especially just for me growing up, queer kid in the South, there was nothing but yearning for so long as it is. And so, I do tend to write a lot of like slow burns. And so for me, I want that payoff for my characters because, for me, my story, like that payoff was almost like life changing kind of way. And so, I do also tend to write a lot of um I pretty much only write adult romance, but I also write a lot of single parents trying to navigate that life. And so, for me, growing up, there was always this thing like, oh my God, you're 30, you're old, you're decrepit. Like you must be ready to like go out to pasture. And like I've realized like once I hit 40 and got older, kind of similar to TJ, some of my books are just starting to get hornier because I'm just like, you know what? I'm a grown ass woman and these are grown ass characters. And if they want to be scissor sisters, that's what they're gonna do. Like, the people have sex. Some people don't because they don't want to, and that's fine. But some people do, and they do, and that's also fine. And so, like, why not just write it and whatever it appeals to you and your characters and what they want and what they don't want. And, like I said, who cares? If they don't like it, don't read it. I don't care. But,
I also don't know if anyone else feels this way, but this is something that I don't think about all the time, but I do think about maybe because like I do also write books for young people. but I'm aware when I'm writing like sex in a queer romance that it literally might be a queer person's first like experience with sex, and I might in fact be like giving them sex education because sex education in our country is so terrible. And I don't like let it guide me. I don't let it control what decisions I make, but it is always in the back of my mind that like, am I setting these people up for successful sexual lives with what I am writing?
God, I hope
Beautiful
no
point.
one's. I hope no one's using my books as a textbook. Like, don't. I mean, I would
Same.
hope that it leads to like actual education if that is something that like is someone's first actual experience with seeing it depicted. But yeah, God, I hope not. I can't. I can't worry about that. That's another thing I'm not allowed to worry about now.
Agreed, very much agreed. But I also think it's fun and interesting kind of to explore it too. Um, at least just for me, like writing small town romances, I actually have had quite a few people who are like, I didn't know people got down like this in small towns. And I'm just like, oh
They got
honey,
nothing else to do. What do we?
at all. There's nothing else to do. There's one general store. It looks the same every day. So what do you think that they're doing? Why do you think they have so many children? Come on.
That's incredible. Absolutely. So with this being with this being about like love out loud and pride and all that stuff, what's your favorite ways of celebrating pride? Not all at once. I know it's a hard one. I guess I'll start. Um, watching, I like to watch, I just started to watch this every year. So a new tradition is But I'm a Cheerleader because it's a classic. Yeah, one of my favorites.
I like it when my straight friends send me money. It's a great month for that. It's so great. June, don't let Juneteenth come around. Oh my gosh, my rent's paid, baby. Not really. Once upon a time it was, but I think that's my favorite part.
Do you, do you invoice them or like how does that work? I
Oh
would love
no.
to get
It's
on
like a
this.
it's like a subscription service. I run a very strict program for years. I know I will wake up on certain days of the year, certain months of the year, and I'm just going to see random $10 to $20 deposits from friends. And at this point, it started as a joke, but now they're just doing it. And I always laugh because um, guilt, whether it be white guilt, straight guilt, whatever kind of guilt, is the most annoying thing to me. So there have been many times when someone comes up to me and they're like, I'm so sorry for straight people. I'm so sorry for white people. Here's my Venmo, baby. And they do it.
I
So
love
that's my
that.
recommendation.
I, I'm obsessed with you.
Thank you. I'm all about getting that money, baby.
You should put
So
your
all,
Venmo
yeah.
link in the chat.
I'm gonna say I clearly my friends are not doing it right, so I'm going to actually have to like reach out to my straight white friends, and he's a male too, straight white male. No, I got to reach out to him and she's like, you have been doing it wrong, and I need it backdated because we've been friends for 30 years. So
Have them pay for that lunch. It's like I love boosters, but it's just your friends sending you money to get Shake Shack. So
I will say, but I'm a cheerleader, so I'm moving house, and one of the things that my son is having to do because I'm like, you are eating enough to like have to help me pack at this point is he found all of like my older queer movies and he found But I'm a Cheerleader and he's like, I don't understand what this means. But why is it bad that she's a cheerleader? And I'm like, oh honey, that's not what that means, but it's fine. We'll get there eventually. Not right now, but we'll get there eventually. But he did watch Tu Wong Fu Thanks for Everything with me. We love that movie, hands down. It's such a good movie.
I love
Yeah,
that.
we just watched Priscilla, Queen of the Desert for the first time. My wife and I had never seen it before, but every June we have our little movie nights on Sunday nights, and obviously in June they're all gay movies. And this year we're watching just a lot of queer movies we hadn't had a chance to watch before. But also, like, I'm 40. I'm not going to go out to a club. Like, I'm not dancing anymore all night. It's just not going to happen. But one thing that I really enjoy doing, this is kind of a new tradition that I started last year, and I'm doing it again this year, next weekend, is doing a little neighborhood queer book swap. I just like put up some flyers on some, bus stops and whatnot, just saying like, hey, this is really chill. You just show up on this date at this place at this time, bring a book or don't, we'll have plenty of books, and like, you can hang out if you want, but you don't have to. If you just want to like grab a book and go, that's also fine. Like, man, just something like not a high barrier of entry that I could just be like, I did something for pride.
I also am in my 40s now. Welcome to the best years of your life, TJ. But I also am too old to go to the club, so my new favorite thing during Pride is harassing my Congress people. I live in Missouri, and so there's often lots of things to harass them about. And if any of you live in a red state, I'll encourage you to harass your Congress people, particularly about HR 8705, HR 2616, or HR 7661, all of which are book banning bills and also just queerphobic bills that are trying to basically legislate trans people out of the public sphere. So, if your congressperson is an asshole like mine, in fact, I think all of mine are assholes, really. Some of them might be dicks. It's hard to know, where on the dick to asshole spectrum they live. But yeah, just call and shout at a Republican. It'll do you good.
It's good for the soul.
Oh, I also keep a little picture of Ronald Reagan that I like to spit at. That's also a favorite activity.
I always joke, I have a friend who's no longer with us, but I always joke that the only thing that helps me within my grief is knowing, because they wanted to be a wrestler, that they are choke slamming Ronald Reagan every single day for the hell of it. They take day trips down to hell to do that. And if that helps your spirit this pride to know that Ronald Reagan is getting bullied by a black trans woman every single day, there you go.
That makes my whole year.
Yes.
Absolutely does. Let's see what we got. We're about 10 minutes till. We can squeeze another. We'll see what our questions are here. All right. Let's see here. One of the questions is, what is your advice for BIPOC queer aspiring authors, especially as traditional publishing seems like it's moving away from diverse books? I knew you were gonna unmute real quick.
Fuck them. And I'm just going to be dead ass about that. Like, don't let the tool skirt confuse you. Fuck them. Because here's the thing. At the end of the day, I think that this up and down is always going to happen, just industry wide, right? Regardless of whether we're talking about tropes, about talking about genres, age groups, whatever it may be. But there's going to always come a point where you have to reckon with yourself. Are you willing to do what's going to sell, or are you willing to do something that's going to help you sleep at night? And there are some people, and I'm not going to say nothing negative about them. There are some people who say, I'm going to do what I can to get my foot in the door so later on I can create the work I really want to desperately create, do it safe, and then do it big. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think there's a difference between that and saying, I'm not going to write what I really want to write that calls me to be an author, because they're not going to want my work to be black, brown, non-white, gay, trans, sapphic, whatever it may be. So if you just genuinely want to write a book that is, doesn't feature underrepresented or marginalized voices, because that's the story in your heart that you want to tell, because we don't only have to tell our stories, right? We can write whatever we want. Then yes, go for it. But if you're doing that to get your foot in the door specifically, because you don't think that you will sell, you don't think that you're going to be loved on in the way that you need to be, just understand you're going to have a lot to work on in therapy later on. And it's going to be a lot harder to shift if you're not at least working with the strategy and intentionality behind that.
Well said. Anyone else have anything to
I mean, this could be an entirely different panel on just that topic. I will say, I mean, it doesn't just seem, it is a fact of numbers that we are being pushed out. I think if I was to give an advice to young people, first advice is never listen to anyone's advice. Advice is rubbish. That being said, you should listen to mine. Um, it's so important to have a community around you. This business is tough, but this business is also not the only way this business can work. Um, Self-publishing exists and thrives in large part because when people cannot get it in the door of traditional publishing, they go and self-publish and then they make a lot of money. And then traditional publishing is like, wait, I want that money. And then they just slap a new cover or sometimes the same cover on that book, give it better distribution, and then eat it out into the world. So have a more expansive dream than just traditional publishing. All of us are complete complex human beings, whether we ever publish a book with a like big five publisher or not. And our creativity matters whether or not it's ever recognized by mainstream publishing. And so having a community around you that has made this business work in different ways is one of the most rewarding things. And go into a community not ever with the spirit of needing or wanting something, but with the spirit of being in community, supporting the people around you, sharing what you know, and absorbing what they know. I think that's how the romance genre in particular has thrived since its inception is through the formation of those communities, and that is also how people of color have thrived and survived is by building those communities.
anybody else have anything to add? Those are good.
I'll add one more small thing to that because you said something
Go
that
for it.
I've actually been thinking about and journaling about a lot about us being so expansive and dreaming past trad publishing. I believe that even dreaming past publishing specifically with books, right? We're such creative people. We have so many different talents that we don't even know about. And I think that when we get locked in on one specific iteration of how we want them to look, we miss out on all the different ways it can look. So just keep that in mind that whether it is writing, physically writing, the audio dramas, and those types of podcasts, doing like YouTube, like there's so many different ways to tell stories and be creative and get your work out there while also writing. So it's not even just within publishing itself. Like, don't be afraid to let it look like whatever it looks like.
I love that, right? And we have, there's a lot of multi-talented, multi-passionate creatives here, right? And it's to your point, it's sometimes we can get so caught up in just that one journey that we see someone else do, and remembering that that's simply proof of something that can be done. But there's something, if you go and do the same thing somewhere else in your own way, you're helping someone else see something that they didn't think was possible, right? So that was great. Um, I'm gonna try to, we got time, about 5 more minutes. Okay. So we have a question here. Okay, so the question, I'm gonna try to paraphrase this a little bit. So this is regarding miscommunication, the miscommunication, third act breakup, if you will, the complicated pain in the ass, blah 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 blah. I have feelings and thoughts, but we'll go beside that. So what are your feelings and thoughts regarding breakups, third act breakups that are communication, miscommunication? If anyone wants to speak to them, and a lot of readers hate them, and I think that makes sense, but I'll let y'all answer.
Have we met people?
Seriously.
Just have we met people? You could I mean, have we been on threads? You could say one thing like, "Oh, here's my bean salad," and someone's like, "Well, what do I do if I don't like beans?" Did you think about the non-liking bean people? I feel like I also feel like in many ways that people are like, I'm tired of seeing this in this story, but you've only seen it in the heteronormative white, story. How someone is miscommunicating when it comes to, let's say, Black people, because that's the community that I live in, is very different. I remember telling someone, bless your heart, and they thought I was actually giving them a prayer. No, that was a complete miscommunication. They did not get it. To be fair, they weren't even from the South, nor were they Black. They weren't from the US at all. So, give them that. But I feel like it's something that happens naturally already. People miscommunicate all the time. And, you could be saying one thing, but if someone is also not ready to hear it, they're not going to hear it and maybe the way that you're saying it. I've had books where I've started reading them and they weren't for me, but then I read them a week later when I was in the right headspace and there was no miscommunication between me and the page. Like we were on the same level right then. And I feel like people are exactly the same way in real life. So of course you're going to see that on the page. You're going to see how people always are, and we should explore that on the page and how it can be miscommunicated between people when it comes to love, because that is a big emotion that I think you can put blinders on when love is involved in many ways. And so that's, sure, can it be done poorly? 100%. But I also think it's something that's just very natural. People miscommunicate all the time. So, of course you're going to see it in the queer space.
Yeah, I'm going to back you up 100% here, Carmen. It's so true. I hear readers complain about miscommunication all the time. And I mean, the reason they hate it is because they've seen so many bad examples of it, right? But every trope has bad examples. It's just that this one happens to, for whatever reason, like hook its claws into people's brains and annoy them a lot more than other things. I don't know why. No, I do know why. It's because they want to think that people want to believe in their hearts, I would never misunderstand somebody, or I would never keep something to myself that's important to share. Like, of course you have and will. And, like, of course you keep things from people. Like, it happens all the time, constantly. You're not even aware you're doing it. That's just how humans are. And, in my books, especially, disclosure is usually a big issue in the trans community. Who you tell, when you tell them, how you tell them, etc. I try to write stories where the miscommunication around that isn't coming from a place of like real fear, but unfortunately that's like just the reality of some of these characters' lives. And when people complain about that, I'm like, okay, well, I'm sorry, but like that's kind of what's going on. So yeah, miscommunication, give it a try.
I know we're basically at time, but I'm going to throw in very, very quickly. I think another reason people hate the miscommunication trope is because you can see both sides plainly. And they don't realize that when you're in that headspace, of course you can't see the other side. So yeah, it's going to be more frustrating when you can see, like, this is very rampant in Deadly Ever After, where both people are coming from. So, oh, why don't they just do this? But please remember that the next time that you go to therapy and you don't know why the other person would do something, and you're sitting there for an hour paying a copay to try to figure it out. So I'll throw that out there.
That's very fair. That is a very fair point. Absolutely. All right, we're at time, but rapid. We're gonna do rapid question for our last one. What are all y'all reading right now, if anything?
I'm reading the new Julian Winters book, Find My Way Down to You, and it's absolutely exquisite.
It's so good. I'm reading that right now as well.
I'm reading We're All Going to Die Tonight by Veronica Bain, and I have since realized I think I'm actually into thrillers, and I've never been into thrillers before, so I think I'm into thrillers now, so that's exciting.
I am reading J.L. Seeger's Act One, and she's taken me through it. It's really good. It's really good.
I am reading a queer fantasy rom-com called Apparently Sir Cameron Needs to Die. It's very funny, and I'm very much enjoying it.
All right. All right, that's time. Thank you so much. I think we got all the questions answered. Thank you so much for all the readers. Thank you, panelists, for being here. It was an absolute pleasure to be able to chat with you and geek out with you about books and loving out loud and pride and all the good stuff like that. So I really appreciate that. If there's
Thank you all
anything
so much for
else,
thank you all
go
so
ahead.
much for coming. This is Billy from Bookstore Romance Day again. You will all be getting an email sometime in the next week with a link so that you can rewatch this lovely panel. I'll also include the books that were just mentioned here at the end so that you can all go check those out as well. And the buy links so that you can buy all of these authors' lovely books. Thank you all for coming and have a great night.